Welcome to the 7th of 7 videos, the grouping conclusion, thank fudge, from the Social Origins and Recruitment Lecture, UofW 2021. And this final one, I'm going to say a little bit about the training of officers, so to speak, like think military colleges and that sort of thing, none of which they had. Okay, officer training, video 7, right. Okay, so obviously commanders play a big part in the training of the rank and file. Okay, it's all part of them too. They're passing on their knowledge, their loyalty. The loyalty and discipline of the soldiers comes down to the effectiveness of their officers. This importance of Weirtus is hard to overstate, and Weirtus is also connected to disciplina, discipline, which can be both sides. In this case, more of the you did a bad thing side of it. So Weirtus is manly courage, or whatever you want to call it, from masculine quality. It's something that in theory everyone could possess. It wasn't necessarily an innate thing, something you could improve upon through training, and a commander would be important in this. So discipline here, of course, the Romans are extremely famous for their discipline. Here, again, following orders, and of course, how do you get to be better disciplined? Through lots of training. So the training is overseen by officers, but also, there were other individuals involved too. And there are even cases where it seems some of the regulations written down. So the Romans are, at least the Roman military seems to have been pretty good at documenting things, both in terms of rosters of different units to citizenship certificates to receipts and whatever else. But it also seems they kept lists for things like training regulations and disciplinary ones and all sorts of other things. You can see example of it. I don't have a quotation to read out from Cassius Dio's Roman history. It's a fragment from his history. Okay, now to give you another example of the training capabilities of the army, the military, and the royal commanders, here is an inscription which really highlights this quite well. And I won't read it. I think this is the famous inscription I told you about. We talked about evidence of training. We had like Vigilius and Josephus, which I haven't talked about yet. Even the remains of Campus Martius and other texts. I told you about this inscription put up by the Emperor Trajan, or on his behalf, in North Africa, which talked about some parade ground moves. So this also appears ILS. Those are its form. It also appears in Campbell, and although it's centered on all sorts of things, it talks regularly about maneuvers. So here we go. Here's something Trajan says to to various officials connected to the military. Your commander has himself told me on your behalf of numerous factors which would have excused you in my judgment, namely that one cohort is absent. Okay, so it talks about maneuvers here. Okay, so here's one to the first Alepanonians here at this in Lambysis in Africa, 138 or 128 CE. You did everything in order. You filled the plain with your exercises. You threw your javelins with a certain degree of skill, although you were using rather short and stiff javelins. Several of you hurled your lances with equal skill. Just now you mounted your horses agilely, and yesterday did it swiftly. If anything had been lacking in your performance, I should have noted it. If anything had been obviously bad, I should have mentioned it. But throughout the entire maneuver, you satisfied me uniformly. Catulinus, my legate, distinguished man, shows equal concern for all the units of which he is in command. Your prefect, various commanders, apparently looks after you conscientiously. I grant you a donative, so more money. And the next little passage to the 6th cohort of Commagenians. So remember, an ala is a wing. This is an auxiliary cavalry wing, and a cohort is an infantry unit within the auxiliary. So here, the next one to them, and it says, it is difficult for cavalry attached to a cohort to win approval even on their own, and more difficult still for them not to incur criticism after a maneuver by auxiliary cavalry. They cover a greater area of the plain. There are more men throwing javelins. They wheel right in close formation. They perform the Cantabrian maneuver in close array, etc. And he goes on. So they have different maneuvers. It hints at their skill with weapons. And, of course, it's these commanders that are being praised for everything they've done to ensure their soldiers can perform well. So Hadrian is, if he didn't necessarily fight in wars too often while he was emperor, he was the guy who saw pretty much the whole Roman Empire and is remarkable in that regard. Emperors themselves are given a prominent role in the training and overall effectiveness of sort of taking the idea of commanders responsible for overseeing some of this, and officers, centurions, etc. Then you have guys in charge of entire units, and you have guys in charge of entire bases, prefect of the camp, and then you might have then the governor of a province and possibly then the emperor looking down at things. Some emperors are said to have been good at this, others bad. So there's Augustus, pretty reported, the famous one. Instilled military discipline, responsible for sort of finalizing the process of creating a standing army. Before this course started, I would have said a professional army, but I'm now convinced, thanks to the excellent arguments put forward by Doug Lee, who has now published this excellent book, which I have not all read, but will be excellent. Warfare in the Roman World has an article on professionalization. He says it's not quite professional, but it has some of the hallmarks, training and pay. Other emperors like Nero are not seen to be quite so good with this. But yeah, this training is connected to discipline. Now, some authors, literary authors, Roman authors, complain about the discipline of certain soldiers and certain commanders and certain legions. And it is, in some ways, a literary trope, topos or whatever. So they say that this person is bad to make another person look good. So that's just a source thing to be aware of. Anyway, so that ends my short video on training and command and some more sources, and gives you hopefully some flavor of all this. And that ends my little overview of social origins, recruitment, and then the training that comes from all of this. So from Bob, the Roman soldier, and the other Bob, that's it for this week.